funnily enough, we try treat our kids as like stakeholders in our family, and there's various levels of decisions we make in our house where we get their input on, but not everything. Yep. So sometimes it's just because dad said so.
Especially around sleep hours, eh? You
Yep.
know, because there's always a constant struggle in that regards.
Cool.
Yeah, I think
So, mhm.
I'm on the same page with Joy, where things lots of decisions kind of you want to gather inputs, but ultimately there's still somebody with a hammer to get it, decided. Usually me or my partner in crime.
Yeah, and I think from that, from the way that you described it, decision making and who has a voice
Mm.
in what's happening, you can see that governance structures are kind of present in all parts of our life. But if we kind of focus in on the on-chain blockchain governance, maybe Jordy, if you want to take this one, how is this different to off-chain governance, and maybe, CENNZnet governance structure versus what you would have at home with your kids?
Cool. Yeah, tricky questions. So just to clarify, the question is how is like on-chain blockchain governance different to at-home governance with my kids?
Yep.
Cool. So I think firstly, one of our goals with on-chain governance is to have a formal process for governance, and this is coming back to that whole code is law idea. So if the code on our blockchain allows governance to happen and allows a certain process to happen, then that's what defines governance for the network. Whereas at home, we have informal governance. It's especially as a parent, it's pretty much up to us to do our best job to get kids to accept the governance.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and which can be tricky. But I think there's also some similarities there as well. Like, although code is law, there's still that social side of governance where we want relationships and the way people interact with each other to be reflected in the process with the way the things we vote on are put out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
yeah,
I
which I
think
think
that's
is very far away from code.
yeah,
Sorry, over to you again.
and that's an important like distinction to make. Some people when they're talking about on-chain governance, especially in Twitter and the blockchain community, they forget that it's not just code is law, but it's not just the only influence that's happening there. You also have people in their relationships, and how different people are interpreting those proposals being sent, etc. But Ken, do you want to kind of explain or maybe dive deep into what does code as law mean and what are the advantages do you reckon that it has for governance?
Oh, okay. Actually, I might have to pass it to Jordy this one, code is law, because I've just been in the blockchain and industry for just recently,
Oh, true,
and
fair enough.
yeah, so my knowledge around that is limited. So I'll pass it to Jordy on this. Can you explain me to us more about the code is law thing, Jordy?
Sure thing. Cool. So I guess the classic example that always comes up here with the code is law argument is the hard fork of Ethereum, which created Ethereum Classic. So if you aren't aware, the kind of too long didn't read version is a smart contract was hacked and a large amount of ether was lost, and a lot of that ether was held by let's say early adopters in the space, and including the Ethereum Foundation.
Right.
And going by a purely code is law world, we would say, well, that hack was a loophole in the law. Like you might think of a loophole in the law we have as people in the societies we live in. That might allow you to do something that's, let's say, frowned upon, but it's still legal because it was a loophole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess the way they resolved that was going outside of this code as law idea and as a community organizing to fork the blockchain and create a version of Ethereum where the hack never took place and all these people had their ETH still. And so Ethereum Classic is the version where code is law and the hacker still had all the ETH, and Ethereum as we know it today is where all the funds were returned. Yeah, so it's quite a contentious topic, I think.
That's
Yeah.
a fascinating concept.
That is. Never thought about it, like community governance being outside of the idea of code as law and kind of being a solution to some of the disadvantages that just hard relying on the code.
Yeah, I think it makes these blockchain systems really resilient, so even if you do come away with a really successful hack, if it's large enough that everyone agrees that maybe it should never have taken place, then there's no guarantee your hack succeeds.
And so in that community governance, it's still made up of people, even though everything is run on the blockchain, and so there is like a kind of a dynamic balance that's being held. And in CENNZnet, there are two particular roles, citizens and counselors. And Ken, you can probably help us dive into this one. So could you kind of explain the different roles and their different responsibilities, how they interact with each other?
Sure. So yes, as you have mentioned, there's split two main roles in CENNZnet governance platform. One is the citizens. Basically, any Sense token holder with their social channels connected to their wallet is can be officially a citizen of our governance platform. And out of the citizen, we got a counselor. Basically, they are the selected members that help forming the body of the governance. They are responsible for creating the proposal and review, passing the proposal to to bring it to the referendum state. And that's where the citizen are jumping in and voting or vetoing that referendum. See, depending on what they feel about it. So that's the two main roles there. It's simple, but it's actually quite powerful. It helps. We got the counselors, I guess the members who are involved into the network understand the network from different aspects. So that they are I guess the right persons to create proposals and review the proposal. And of course, citizens are the final decisions to have that proposal whether to go forward or not.
And I guess like the average person would probably be a citizen, and if they kind of look at how we've laid things out, the first question might be is that how do we ensure that there is a competent, a skilled, and a trustful council to lead things. And then do you want to just talk about our current counselors for CENNZnet and the kind of different skills and backgrounds that they bring in?
Yes, sure. So our first initial body of the councils consists of 5 members. We got from CENNZnet, there will be Jordi himself, and Marco, he's our Chief of Information Security Officer. So they are in a way representing the technical committee of the Sense network. And then we have 2 other members from community side, that is Shin and Nosia. They are very active members in CENNZnet communities. So it makes a lot of sense for them to be in the council body. And the last one is Wilfred. He's actually the CTO of Glorious Digital, one of the first few companies that build application on our network. And it makes sense for him to be part of this the council body too, because he's having that builder perspective, or I guess developer perspective. And so we got kind of a really nice balance structure here from a different aspect. One from community, one from developers, and one from builder. And I think it works out quite well.
Yeah, and it's really advantageous to have Wilfred on board, I think. Especially since, Glorious is doing so well recently. They probably have a lot of things that they want to implement as well, on
Exactly.
CENNZnet.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. So maybe just taking a step backwards a little bit. So Jordy, maybe a question for Jordy. This current governance structure is kind of a fork from Polkadot, is that correct?
Yeah, so I would say that the governance process we're working with has been inspired by Polkadot. It's not actually a fork at all. It's something we've written ourselves, but it's definitely inspired by their vision for governance and the framework that they've created for building blockchains lends itself very well to this on-chain governance idea. Um, but I think we have slightly different approaches to how we're trying to achieve on-chain governance at this point.
Yeah, excuse me for throwing around like words like that. When a non-technical person gets in the blockchain, starts learning these words like fork, and starts throwing it around. But yeah, in this case, so Polkadot was the inspiration. So what are the kind of differences, and what do you think are the kind of advantages that CENNZnet has in terms of its governance?
Good question. Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say this space of on-chain governance is very, very young. Like, I think if you would try to do a Google search right now, there's not much that would come up. So this is very much experimentation in the open. But the governance is more like, here's a direction we want to take with this chain. And, in the Web 2 world, you can think of a blockchain like a database, and you have product managers and people behind the scenes normally that are deciding what kind of features a database should have. And those features are normally things that they think users want or know that users have requested. But in our case, we have this open system that anyone can come and build on. And we want a way for this network to decide for itself, and the people that have stake in this network to decide for themselves how we evolve and improve this network. And so I think, coming back to the question, like the advantages that we have on CENNZnet versus like Polkadot, like I said, I think the tech is very much the same. It's just more philosophical differences at this point. So something we wanted to do at CENNZnet is angle the governance toward making progress. So with the way we've set up governance, at first councillors have this ability to propose changes to the network. So this could be something like, we want this new feature, or we would like to adjust fees for this reason. And the councillors amongst themselves will vote upon this, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen straight away. At this point, it goes to a referendum, and the CENS token holders themselves can decide if they want to cancel it or not. So they can vote to veto, meaning they can vote to cancel, but not necessarily to accept something. So by not doing anything, that counts as saying, I'm fine with it. And because of that, we're aiming our governance towards like making progress. So we can say we kind of have some trust that the councillors are going to propose something that's good. And if you don't want to worry about proposals, there is some trust that the rest of the CENS token holders are also happy with this decision. Otherwise, they would vote against it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you did mention that DAO is quite a new concept. It's quite young, and there hasn't been a lot of experience yet. And I kind of want to tie this in and want to get Ken's perspective, because Ken hasn't been in the blockchain industry for long. So, hearing about this new way of governance, was it a surprise to you? Like, did you instantly think that this would be a good thing to do?
It's funny enough, it's new and young, but it's actually building around a century-old idea, right? I mean, it's somewhat resemblance of our current governance in the countries. It's, like the same flow of process. You go for a proposal, PM, council or members of, I guess, the governance lobbying the idea, making sure everybody got a thumbs up, and then it move on to the referendum. That's where us, the citizen, the normal citizen, can vote on it. So it's new and young in terms of concept, how to make it work in the digital world, but the idea itself is it's been around for centuries, and I find it super fascinating. It's just great, but yes, the implementation of it is still experimental, like Jody mentions, because there's things in digital, behaving and work in very different way than in the real life. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see where this heading in terms of the governance and like how people innovating in this field.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about the implementation and the execution. The devils are always in those details, for
Exactly.
people to find loopholes and stuff. And now, that kind of reminds me, if I just kind of think of a really common criticism of governance structures, because they kind of mirror our real life governance stages, it would kind of be prone to the same weaknesses. In that, what if the people, or the people who are driving that governance process, they put in really nonsensical proposals like, let's spend this much money to change the color of our logo, or to add like a dog and an Elon on the branding. So Jordy, do you want to kind of share like how our governance structure kind of stops that kind of thing from happening?
Yeah, good question. So I think we're coming back to this code as law idea. And so we want to set up our governance process using this code as law idea and creating these code pathways that allow us to govern the system in a way that is very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to abuse. And so this is why we have the system where the councillors can propose something, but ultimately it will require only a small amount of CENNZ token holders need to disagree with something to actually be stopped, which I think is more than you can say for the governance that happens in the nations around us at the moment. Like you can probably think of a lot of decisions that happen in government that the majority of people aren't happy about, but there's nothing they can do. But in this blockchain world where the decision making and the outcomes all take place on this system, we can codify that decision making process and ensure that the rights of all the stakeholders in this network are respected.
Yeah, and this is probably a good opportunity for Ken to give us a quick talk through of the stages in our governance, from the user experience, from the counselor, all the way to the citizen.
Yes, sure. So basically there's two main flows, user flows that we are having at the moment. One is the identity connect flow, which you guys have seen. It's basically is to become a citizen, you first need to connect your wallet with two of the social channels, one Discord and another one is Twitter. And once that's done, you will be granted a citizen role in our Discord server. And that should open up all of the channels around the governance. The second flow, which we have deployed and released and waiting for the first proposal, is this proposal creations flow. This is purely for the counselors to create a proposal. It's it's basically when a new proposal is created, what we want to do is we want to be quickly notify other councillors so they know so they know there's a new proposal has been submitted, and so they can find time to review and either pass or reject it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we integrate with Discord to create a message, and that any councillor will receive notifications. Well, depending on their settings, right? But all the proposal will be appear as the message on Discord.
Right.
And if you had noticed that both the user flows are actually leading to Discord, and that is our intentions. We went through quite a lot of iterations, and what we find out that we want to build something that simple but functional, and we want to iterate it more often. So all of this is we build the whole governance platform around Discord, because Discord has been a very important communication hub for CENNZnet community. So it makes a lot of sense to build a governance platform around it. And yes, so to go back to the flow, once the proposal has been submitted, all the councillor review, and if they're happy with it, they click on the past. And if 50%, over 50% of councillors pass the proposal, that move the proposal to the next stage, which is the referendum. And again, a message will be created on the referendum channel on Discord. And this is where all citizens will be able to review, look at it, and basically have a chance to veto it. And yeah, so the fate of the proposal finally ends up on citizens.
Yep, and that was a really good idea, Ken, to put it on Discord actually, because now when I look at our governance process, it's very special compared to the governance that Polkadot has versus the governance that Algorand has as well. So Polkadot is quite technical. Like you can also you can make very specific changes, and you can see what those changes are. But then again, the interface to actually get there is just a step further from what the usual user would like to see.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a bit more advanced. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And then with the Algorand governance, you have a really simple, really easy to understand. You click A and B, but you don't actually have control of what proposals are being put in. So it is like their foundation that is kind of controlling that. So I think, yeah, with this Discord interface, we're kind of finding the middle ground and getting the best of both sides. Yep. So I think that's a really special thing about CENNZnet governance. Ken mentioned that you can veto, citizens can veto proposals or referendums, but there's no option to vote yes for it. So Jordy, do you want to kind of take us on the rationale behind that? So how come when councillors, when they submit proposals, the council comes in and votes yes or no, but when it turns into a referendum for citizens, they only have the option to veto?
Sure, good question. So again, I think this is coming down to the fact that this is a very early development in the blockchain space, this on-chain governance idea. And I think for the ability, like allowing this situation where lots of people can just propose different things, I don't think it gears the community around specific things. And we still want a way that everybody can propose something that they care about. And the way we want to do that at first, so again, this is like an open experiment and a direction that we're trying to move in, but not necessarily final right now. But if there's something that you're really passionate about seeing for the network, a decision you want to make, then the best way to go about having that put forward is by working with a counselor. So, pitching your idea. There's no reason you can't write a strong justification for why this thing is a good idea for CENNZnet.
Mm-hmm.
and you can present that to any councillor, and if they're willing to back it, they can propose it to the council.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there is that way for people to have their say, no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And there was that idea I recall, something about the kind of overall system working in favor of pushing proposals in rather than coming from a point of um do we let this proposal go in or not? For
That
example,
goes back to
yeah.
that Jordy mentioned about is
Mm-hmm.
the governance platform is built with the making progress mentality.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want sudden functionality and features just getting held off just due to the lack of vote.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the whole idea of you can only veto but not not clicking yes, not passing it on the referendum stage is literally that functionality. We want things to move forward, and of course, there's a trust and
Mm-hmm.
first the council's bodies, making
Mm-hmm.
sure that they create a proper proposal and they've been reviewed thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is a trust on the citizens who actively involved in the network and understand the implication of the changes.
Mm-hmm.
But as always, we want to keep moving forward, not
Mm-hmm.
getting, I guess, hold off, by certain
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
stuff.
So to expand on this idea, I guess the way for proposals to reach the chain at this moment is a little bit informal. You have to
Mm-hmm.
go through a counselor. You still have to have those conversations, whether it be on Discord or whatever, or on GitHub,
Hmm.
and you need the counselor to put it forward. But there, in the future, we can create a system where people can propose anything, and then there is another process before that goes to the council, and that is formal, and that is code as law on chain. But
Mm-hmm.
for now, I don't see any significant benefit in that,
Mm-hmm.
and it I think it really helps in this early stage to have less, let's say, less voting happening, um, because there's always this issue of like voter apathy, where there's just so much going on, you just stop caring, or there's so many policies, you stop.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And I would much rather have people voting on less things that they care about than just all these
yeah.
ideas floating around and
If you'd
not
compare
making
it to real
progress.
life, it'd be like less bureaucracy, more getting things done, keeping it simple.
Correct. That's right.
Exactly. And yeah, I'd really prefer a lot of the conversation to be happening off chain, like, and
Mm-hmm.
in Discord and that kind of thing.
Yep. And so we did mention that it is a trust-based process somewhat, which is, quite different from the messaging that blockchain usually gives. So the governance kind of structure, it's not perfect, but it's geared in a way to progress the chain, to make sure things are growing, and then it's kind of self-improving by itself in the future over time. But Jordy, if we had like an ideal kind of blockchain governance, and then people in the blockchain, working for bounties, treasury allocating the right funds to the right, to the right department or something. So what does an ideal blockchain governance look like to you in the future?
Oh, great question. Yeah, so I think one of the most important functions of governance is figuring out how to allocate um, the network's, let's say, budget. So if you were to think of our governance like a city council or your local council, they collect rates from the residents, and then they choose how to spend those rates to develop the city further.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step for like an ideal governance system is to have this ability to propose work where we say, here's the thing we want done on CENNZnet, here's how much funding we can put towards it,
Mm-hmm.
and we can have this bounty system where anyone can come along and request to take on a piece of work, and at the time when it's complete, they can be given the funds. So there's that aspect I think is part of an ideal governance system, where the chain can self-sustain itself. And the next part of an ideal governance system, I think, is what I mentioned before, how at the moment we have this single council that's voting on everything, and that's actually quite tiring, and I think it will lead to some apathy. What would be better is more like a court system we have today, where we have smaller courts dedicated to, let's say, different things, and very few things reach the Supreme Court. And we could create governance bodies for very specific parts of the network governance.
Oh, literally recreating real life governance, but in the digital world.
Exactly. Yeah. So we could have a smaller council in charge of, let's say, bridge maintenance. And if for some reason some maintenance needs to happen on our bridge, or like some security issues arise, there's a smaller council that has some ability to action that much faster than the normal governance system. They might have different parameters around the time to execute those kinds of decisions, and yeah.
And you get paid for your work as well. Like maybe you won't make a living, but you get kind of
Yeah, of course.
compensated for your time. You're doing what you enjoy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in that ideal kind of blockchain world that Joey just described, Ken, do you think there is an important place for user experience? Where do you think that plays into everything here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything, user experience is the most important factor of everything, regardless of what in real life or in digital world. Because ultimately, without the user, this governance platform will just a machine that, with nobody participating, that nobody using it. And to have to to I guess to attract more people, or to help onboarding people, then you need to have a great user experience throughout. So yes, whichever we go. Like you could think of like it's actually user experiences that just appears everywhere. Like when you look at the vote paper, when you go voting, it's looks nice and simple enough for people to vote and such. And that's exactly what we have to do as well. So, and make it easy for people to, on board and jump in and participate. So yeah, that's very important.
Yep, the whole governance process is made up of all these users. And if they can't find an easy way to access, all the tooling, then
Yes,
we're gonna have a hard time
exactly.
running it.
That's right.
Cool. So I think it's time to move on to some of our user questions. So what is the status of community members participate in governance? Was there at least 33% participation in the total stake volume of the network? I believe the user is asking about how the participation rate is going, connecting to the identity module. And I guess in part I can answer this one. So participation right now is still quite low. So we haven't hit that 33% of the total stake volume of the network. But there is a reason that we kept that percentage there. It is to make sure that that proposals that are beneficial cannot just be vetoed quite easily. So there still needs to be kind of that security in place where you need to have at least 33% of the stake to stop a proposal from happening. And as Jordy said, governance is a work in progress. So the more work you're doing in here, the more eyeballs it's gonna get, the more people are gonna join in, and take part in driving the growth of the blockchain. Do you guys have anything else to add to that question?
Yeah, the important part for me is that if you own CENS tokens, then right now you can participate in governance and help to build a better CENZnet. And I don't think there's much more a governance system can do for you than that. Like if you're building on another chain right now, you really have not much influence. Yep. So it's really on to us as CENNZ holders now to participate.
And maybe this next question for Ken. So the user asks, can a CENNZ holder have voting rights and a token holder vote, or do they have to be staked? So he's asking, do you have to stake to participate in governance? And maybe if you want to explain why we want people to be staked.
Yes. So the short answer is yes. You have to stake to be able to vote. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Jordy, but staking is just the way, like a bond. It's just a way to make sure that it's showing the commitment from the citizens that they want to participate in the future of the CENNZnet, and they want to be part of the team to keep growing the network. That's from my perspective with that requirement. Maybe you could elaborate more, Jordy?
Sure. Yeah. So the reason we want people to be staked when they vote is because it ties you to the economic outcome of the vote. So there's a whole, class of situations that can happen if you're not staked and you vote for something, then you're not tied to the outcome at all. So we're building governance and CENNZnet for people that are holding the tokens. So if you're someone that's not staked, you don't really have any. You're not tied to the outcome of your vote.
Yep.
That's the way to put it. Yeah. That's right.
And there is also another requirement to doing the identity module as well, which is connecting two social accounts. So Jordy, do you want to explain the reason for that?
Sure, good question. So part of that reasoning is to enable, the cool integration you can see today where the roles and the off-chain portion of the governance is still connected to the on-chain portion. So the counselors aren't fully anonymous because they have like a public duty as well within the community to, do their governance roles well. So as part of this process, we wanted council members and people participating in governance to register like a social identity along with their stake. Yeah.
Cool. Yep. And last question was, what if the total stake volume of governance participants is less than 33% of the total stake volume of the network? So the user is asking, the veto condition is that those who must veto the tokens they hold must account for at least 33% of the total stake on the network. But what if the governance participants initially don't meet that requirement? What would happen in that case? Ken, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we actually think about this a lot. First and first, yes, if the total stake of governance participant is less than 33%, and the citizen as a whole cannot veto a proposal. That is true. But just keep in mind that the threshold are there, but it can be a proposal created to lower that down. And I think it's all up to the community to decide whether or not is functional. And I guess in a way we have to wait and see as well. The time will tell. To me, it's 33% right now. Is a good default value, but we can tweak it along the way with the feedbacks from the community. And yeah, that's just my take.
Yep.
Jordy,
No, that's
what
an
do you think?
important point. Yeah, Jordy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few different pathways you could go with this, but ultimately the person who has the most tokens has the most to lose and gain. And so voting rights always have to be tied to the number of tokens.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so if there's not 33% of stake that disagrees with something, then it must be fine. Otherwise, that 33% of stake would take action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important to note that Ken mentioned that this process, governance process itself, can also be changed and improved upon based on community feedback. The community can actually use the process itself to make changes onto the process.
Exactly.
Constant cycle of improvement, evolution. But yeah. Anyway, I think that this concludes our AMA and podcast today. You guys have anything else to add?
No, it's been great, Jaffar. Thanks for having us.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot, Jordy. Thanks, Ken. Yeah. See you guys next time.
All right. Thanks, man.
Bye bye.
See you later.